Good morning. Welcome to the Friday, December 2nd NBA Betting Strategy Show. With me, as always, Mike Lockey. You know him from PokerCoachingLive.com. Also with us this morning, fresh off the Hemsworth Challenge, 60 hours of no eating or something crazy like that. Matt Mosselman, you know him from DraftKings show The Slate. You know him from his own podcast, Studying the Sharps. I am Mike G. You know me from hanging out with these two guys on this show. Let's jump straight into it's a big slate tonight, but not a ton of value, but a few games worth talking about that potentially have some betting value. Matt, let's go straight to Utah, Indiana. What do you got?
Okay, so we have a few games where we're going to need injury news to break our way to create some value. And there's one major one that we already have a questionable tag for. So we're not really speculating here. We have Tyrese Halliburton for Indiana. He was downgraded to questionable yesterday evening with a groin injury. He's coming off not such a good game. The Pacers were blown out in his return to Sacramento. He played fewer minutes than normal, probably in large part due to the blowout, but maybe he was dealing with something during the game too. So it's really hard to say if he'll play or not play. I'll just kind of give the if then based on what we want if he's in or not in. Essentially, if Halliburton plays, there's nothing here. This is kind of weird to me, but when Halliburton was announced as questionable, the Jazz went from -4.5 up to -5. It was a small bump just from the possibility that he would not play. And now the line is back down to 4.5, and even there's some -4s around. So either I don't even want to say the public because I think it's too early in the day for the public to really be a relevant variable to talk about. For some reason, the market still likes Indiana despite not knowing if Halliburton is going to play or not. Maybe they just think the Pacers are so much better than the Jazz that it doesn't matter. Or maybe the market thinks that Halliburton just is definitely going to play and this is a formality that he's on the injury report. So I don't really know, but what I do know is that if Halliburton doesn't play, we're going to like Utah a pretty good amount at -4.5, and even more at -4. We'll have a fair line at that point of about -7. So 2.5, 3 points of value would be like a 1 unit bet if Halliburton doesn't play. And then we can kind of get into the total too, because Halliburton.
That part excites me in this conversation.
Yeah, I think there's more value here on the total than there is on the spread potentially.
All right. And so also only if Halliburton is out?
Yeah, so with a total, like our model is only looking at point spreads. We know players' relative value to the league average. Like that is where our entire system is derived from. With the total, like we have nothing. But this game has a point total approaching 240. It's as high as you can get. Like there's no way you get a total in this neighborhood unless you have two up-tempo teams with mediocre defense playing against each other. If you take Halliburton out of this game, you lose quite a bit offensively for Indiana. I think anyone with half a brain who follows basketball, even for like a second this year, knows Halliburton is really important to the Pacers. He's kind of their whole offense. Matherin's good, but like Halliburton is driving the offense. He's also someone who plays at a quick pace. Like the game is a lot faster when he's out there. And then we have the added benefit of this is like it's like a mild version of the Trae Young, DeLon Wright phenomenon from last year, where the backup is a defense first, not very offensively minded point guard. So last year, DeLon Wright was like the best compliment for Trae because he doesn't really play any offense or he's not that good at offense. His pace is a lot slower, but he's really good defensively, which is the opposite of Trae Young.
Right, so we get the double whammy here.
We get the double whammy with TJ McConnell.
Actually triple whammy, right? Indiana should score less. The pace should be slower, and there's a more defensive-minded player that's in the game.
Yeah, and then maybe we get bigger lineups too, because with Chris Duarte already out, this team just doesn't have a lot of guards. So in minutes where McConnell's not out there, we might have like Buddy Hield running point. And then it's just a bigger lineup, and the pace gets even slower than we might expect if Duarte were healthy.
So I have a thought here that I normally don't like to go to, but this is reserved for special occasions. My immediate thought here is I would like to respond to this Halliburton news with maxing a under and a Utah parlay. I think these two are highly correlated. And I think this is a rare situation where I don't mind using a parlay to truly like leverage the situation and get the odds in such an incredible manner that, if we can get Utah 4.5 and under 240.5, if Halliburton's out, I think those are highly, highly, highly correlated. And I think that is a really good bet.
I'm just trying to zoom in here so we can get a better look at what we're dealing with. Because it's hard for me to respond because I don't know. I don't really have anything to suggest if that's true or not. But both sides of the parlay are good on their own. So where are you seeing the correlation coming from? Like what part of the game?
So there's two realities. There's the lines where the reality has Halliburton baked in to some degree.
Right.
And then there's the reality where he's not baked in at all. If you're adding this, defensive player, TJ McConnell, in there, I just think that most of the time when Utah is covering, they're covering because of a lack of Indiana production. So I think that, it's just more likely in the Utah wins it's going to be because of low total. Maybe I'm connecting dots that don't need to be there. Maybe it's just two separate plus EV bets, and maybe the parlay is unnecessary.
Right.
But I just when one piece of news correlates a game and a total moving drastically, I just feel like there has to be an opportunity there.
Yeah, you could look at it the opposite way too, though, where clearly the thing we're looking at is Indiana to score less. Like, sure, we're going to get a slower pace, and sure, we may get Utah scoring less too. But you could take, like, the low-risk way to play this is just Pacers team total under. Like, that's the most direct point of entry to the value for this game if Halliburton is not playing.
On the table no matter what?
Even if he's in, you're saying?
No. I'm saying separate of this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, so the difficult thing with these, and it's a good problem to have, is
there's lots of ways to play the news.
Yeah.
And, obviously with limits, you're forced to play it in different ways sometimes. But, I'm not always maxing my limits, let's be honest, right? So I'm also trying to be plus EV, and I'm also trying to play the situation the best that I can.
Yeah.
Go ahead and finish what you were saying. I interrupted.
No. So that's sort of on the same line. Like, there's two categories of bettors really for this type of thing. Someone who has limits as a roadblock and someone who doesn't. For the person like me who has to worry about limits, you basically just want the quickest possible bet that is plus EV, and as many of them as you can get. And if one is like a slightly worse way to have played it, like a slightly less positive bet than another one, that's okay because you're going to be able to make more money in the long run just by being able to get more money down. Like
more plus EV bets.
Right. Like the parlay of Indiana of Utah and the under is probably a little bit better than the Indiana team total under. But I think both are good, and whichever one you can get more money on, if you're up against limits, like that's the one you pick. If you're not up against limits, though, then what you're talking about is trying to optimize. Like, what is the best way to play this? What is the best version of this bet? I really think the game total under by itself is the best way, though. Like, to me, Halliburton is worth... we've got him estimated 2 points to the point spread, but I have the rest of this Pacers team pulled up now. Let me see if I can zoom in enough that... people can see this. Yeah, I think this should be okay. So Halliburton is a 4.5 on offense and a negative 1.5 on defense. Their defense will be better without him also because, like I said, TJ McConnell is a positive defender. So, like, Halliburton might be worth 8 points to the total. And the total has only come down about 1 or 1.5 so far. It opened at, I think, 239.5, and it's now 238. I'm just double checking. Yeah, most of the market is at 238, and actually, this would be interesting if this is correct, but The odds screen is showing that Caesar still has 239.5. Just confirming. But it looks like everywhere else is 238.
Gotcha. Okay.
So at
So I
239.5, like I just bet it now and just bet it back the other way if Halliburton winds up playing.
Or
Okay.
cash it out or whatever.
It looks like that's not real though. They're off the board. Okay, never
Okay.
mind. But even
Okay.
like the next conversation should be what do we do, right, Mike? That's where you're going.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
this is a
I
recurring problem.
think we have talked through this, and now people want to say, all right, so do I bet it now? Do I wait for the Halliburton news? What should I do? So
Okay.
what should we do?
Okay, so I'm going to include the parlay as part of like the hierarchy of things to consider for this game. I think my number one consideration would be the game total under. Like if he's out, that's the best thing. Followed in some order, like I'm not exactly sure how I would rank them, but in some order by like a Jazz under parlay, a Indiana team total under, maybe even a Utah spread bet. Although I actually think that's the lowest priority. But I think that would be good too if he's not playing. But that order roughly with the game total under being the priority. So if you're at a book where you can cash out, because the opening line was 239.5, I think we can be pretty confident it doesn't bounce back above that because that was the line before we had any update on him. When it was assumed he was playing, that was the line. So if you bet under 238 and you have a cash out option and he winds up playing, you can cash that out even if you mistime it, like you're not there to cash it out right when it breaks. You can cash that out probably a minute before tip off and lose like 10% of your bet, or maybe even a little less. So that as a worst case scenario, I think that's totally fine. So what I'm suggesting is if you're around to be able to hedge or cash out in the event he plays, just bet the under now. Or if you're at a book where you have the cash out available, even if you're not going to be around, I think you can also just bet the under now. And by under, I would say game total under, and then Pacers team total under. The issue with the parlay is you can't really cash those out.
Gotcha. And when we're saying the under, since most of the books have it at 238.5 now, is that the number that you're saying is
Yeah.
a good bet now? Assuming you
Are you
have a
seeing
cash out.
117 for the Pacers?
Yeah, so I played this a bit wrong. Like when the news broke last night, given what I now know, like I kind of just reacted in the moment, but
Right.
I went with, let me see what I actually have here. I bet all three things that I'm saying. It's just the distribution of amounts. I probably could have done better. I went with
Gotcha.
1 unit on the under, 1 unit on the Jazz, and like a quarter of a unit on the Indiana team total. If I could do that again, I would have bet the game under for like 2 units, the Indiana team total for like 1, and then maybe like a half unit on Utah. Like I would have reprioritized. But those are really the 3 bets. But I'm
Okay.
saying, yeah, 238.5, like if he doesn't play, I think we see a game total of like 231 at tip-off. And we do have a reference point for this. The Indiana-Orlando game, which was the day after we thought Halliburton was going to be out for a while with the ankle injury, and then he wound up playing. That game total dropped by 6.5 from 230. I want to say 230.5 to 224. Just from him being doubtful before he was even fully ruled out. We got 6.5 points off the total. And then when he ended up playing, it went back by like 4.5 of those. The game actually ended up, I think, middling the total, if I'm not mistaken. Like it got just below the original number. So the results were whatever, they were normal. But
Got it.
we got a 6.5 point drop to the total with him going from like 100% to play to like 20% to play. So
Okay.
my hunch is the books are going to value his impact on the total around 8 points. And so far,
Okay.
him going from in to questionable, it's only gone down by like 1.5.
Gotcha. So a lot of potential value here. If you have the option to cash out, you can go ahead and bet those now.
Yep.
If not, try to keep an eye on it. We'll try to notify you when we see it through the Preaching Sense Twitter account. But definitely value here if Halliburton's out.
Yes.
All right. Anything else on that game? Or are we ready to move on to the next topic, next game with value?
Ready to move on, and I guess it's really just that Atlanta-Denver game.
Okay. All right. Let's talk Nuggets Hawks. What are we looking at?
Okay, well, Atlanta has some injuries. Let me see. I need to scroll up here so we can.
Yeah, we're not seeing. I think Capella's. Well, okay. Yeah. There we go.
And Bogey.
Bogey's a little bit cut off. Can we get him? There we go. All right, it's a little small now, but now we can get Bogey on the screen. He's got a long name. There he is, though. Okay, so Atlanta opened at -2, and then we got news yesterday that Collins was downgraded to out. He had gotten injured in the prior game, so maybe that was like partially accounted for. DeAndre Hunter was downgraded to out. I don't know if he got injured in the prior game. He's been dealing with an illness, so maybe it's that again. And then we got Capella downgraded to questionable, which was the one that was like most out of nowhere because he had just played a full game against Orlando. So clearly a bad update for Atlanta. The line went from Hawks being favored by 2 to now we have a line where Denver is favored by, I think, maybe even 3. It's at least 2.5, but it's been moving a bit. 2.5. Okay, so 4.5 points the line moved. And I think Atlanta was probably looking a bit undervalued for the opening line if they were healthy. Like Atlanta -2 might have been a bet if Collins was in and we knew Capella and Bogdanovich were in. Because Bogdanovich is rated a lot better than people would think. He's got a per 48 rating of 2.5. And it's especially important because Atlanta's not very deep. So even though he's probably going to be on a minutes limit in his first game back, him being a good player is really important because it means they don't have to play. Let me just find some of these names because they are.
I actually was going to bring that up. This team has changed a lot over the past couple of years.
Yeah, it really has.
They used to be like awkwardly deep, and now they're like incredibly shallow.
Yeah, we're looking at like Aaron Holiday, Jarrett Culver, and Trent Forrest as the guys that play if Bogdanovich is not ready. They're not like those guys are all like -1 to -2 ratings. They're not horrific, but
this Capella Q tag is interesting to me because he was out with like dental pain for a couple games, and then he came back. I'm not really sure if he hurt himself in the last game or what. Obviously, there's a million reasons why, but
they're calling it a foot injury, so I can't imagine it's related to his mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be, but who knows?
I was wondering if it was like maybe a conditioning thing or like
yeah.
First NBA player on the Q tag with hoof and mouth disease. But anyway, all right. So this game right now, according to our sheet, looks like it's got really strong value, but we're saying hold off, right?
Because we need both of these guys in.
Okay.
Because even though
both in, we like the plus point, the value that's showing there now. That you would say bet that.
Let's be honest about this spot, Matt. Let's be honest real quick. We're probably going to get both pieces of news at the same time, I guess. The worst case scenario would be they give you one piece of news and they say the other guy's a game time decision.
That's exactly what I'm expecting, though.
So the problem here is, are you willing to act on an individual piece of news? My assumption is no. And then how likely are we to get this together? My assumption is not very likely. So I'm struggling to find a way to play this.
Okay, so the cash out can be your friend here again if you have that access because
remind me which books are best for that.
MGM is pretty good. WinBet I think is hit or miss. You're always more likely to be able to get a cash out on a money line bet. So for the people who like betting money lines anyway, when you have a small underdog, I know we had that conversation 2 days ago, that actually will help you in this case because it gives you more access to a cash out. Because with spreads for a lot of books, they won't let you cash out unless the line hasn't changed. This line is going to change. So at MGM or Bet365 and maybe a couple others, they'll still let you.
It doesn't change, right?
What's that?
We're only going to want to cash this one out if it doesn't change, right?
Well, okay, so here's what I think will happen. Because that is the answer to that is kind of.
Okay.
Bogdanovich, I think, will play. He got upgraded to doubtful from out before last game. That was our 50-50. He didn't play. Yep. Now he's questionable. He's closer to playing. And now they're shorthanded. Like, this just totally makes sense to be the game he returns.
Okay.
I think he'll be in. I think we'll get that at some point. Capella, though, I think we get game time decision.
Okay.
I would say they're going to want him to play because they're on a bit of like a losing skid. They're in danger of Miami passing them for the division. They just lost to Miami. They're going up against Jokic tonight. Like if Capella can be out there, it's a pretty big deal. This is not another game against Orlando that wouldn't matter that much where they could win without him. Like they kind of need Capella tonight to guard Jokic. So I think,
Capella's impact on the spread tonight is probably like 6.
well, it's only 2.5 because Okongwu is good, but it's
I
more
agree,
than it
actually.
would be because, yeah, I guess like you could argue for matchup reasons. I do think Okongwu is good enough to hold his own. The problem is for
Then
the
you get whoever the backup
it's
minutes
you get
are.
Frank Kaminsky playing.
Yeah,
That's the
not gonna be
problem.
good times.
Like if it was just 48 minutes of Capella
Like
versus 48 of
Okongwu can't
Okongwu, it would be
play-
fine.
Can Okongwu play 33 minutes? I think
No.
he's more of like a 26-minute player.
Yeah, they're
right?
not going to do that. Plus, he's going to foul out if he does that. Like, it's
Yeah,
not going to
so-
happen. Frank
I'm
Kaminsky
gonna,
will be
like,
on the court for a decent amount if Capella's not available.
Yeah.
This could be a higher estimate. Like, I kind of tried to, because Capella's 3.5 points per 48 minutes, but he only plays like 25 to 30 normally. So that would be like a 1.5 or 1 3/4. But the reason it's an estimate of 2.5 is because of how bad Frank Kaminsky is.
Yeah.
Hopefully he gets to go up against DeAndre Jordan. We can get, because he's been back in the rotation. I don't know why.
Okongwu versus DeAndre might be a good matchup.
Yeah. Okongwu versus Jokic, not so much. So ultimately, what I think we'll get is Bogdanovic is good to go. Capella game time decision. I'd be really surprised if Capella is ruled out early in the day for the reasons that I said. Like, they want to try to have him play. He may ultimately just not be healthy enough, but I think they take
wait
it.
till the last minute on Capella.
Yeah, I
because
think they
they're
take it
gonna
up to
try
game
every
time.
chance they can. I
Right.
agree with you there.
They're going to have him warm up and see how he feels, or at least like get closer to game time.
All right, so if Capella's in, we want to be betting Hawks plus 2.5. Is there value less than that, or is that the number?
No. So you can get it at plus 1.5, or I mean, the value shrinks. Like, it'll still be good if they're slight underdogs, but it won't be as good.
Got it.
But
Okay.
if we get Bogdanovic in,
Mm-hmm.
then you can just bet the Hawks if you're at a place where you can cash out, and then if Capella winds up not playing, then you cash out, or you bet the other side and lose your vig or whatever. I think
Got it.
that's how I'm gonna play it. Once we get a
Okay.
positive indicator on Atlanta, I'm gonna get some on Atlanta, and then if Capella winds up out, I'll just bet it back the other way and take a tiny loss for the vigs.
Got it. Okay.
And if
All
we
right.
if we happen to get them both being announced in at like 1:30,
Mhm.
in the next couple hours, then Atlanta's like a 1 to 1.5 unit bet, and we're good to go.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Looks like is there value still for Toronto, Brooklyn, or is there another game worth talking about?
Yeah, not really. I mean, if you can get a plus 2.5, but I'm not sure if that's really available.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we should have done a show last night when it was plus 3 and plus
What's
2.5.
a late night victory lap from?
No, look,
Brilliant.
not everything's been all roses lately. So I'm a little bit proud of the call that I made last night. Matt made the obvious first call of this is a good line. He probably got it a plus 3, so my victory lap's going to be only
I did, yeah.
minuscule compared to his.
Mm-hmm.
But when I looked at the line, it was 2.5, and I had, that half point of line movement actually made me think, I could wait on this one to get confirmation, but this is just one of those things where I'm going to wake up and the line's already down to 1.5. And if there's no news on this, it's going to never go back to 2.5. So there's actually a future world where maybe we do a 2 a.m. show every once in a while when big slates are there, because that is actually some of the best quote unquote fishing, whatever you want to call what we do. Where if you have an idea of what the true lines are, as soon as they get posted, you're going to get the best prices when you set the markets, no matter what, right? But that's a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort, and Matt knows these things off the top of his head. So, I was able to take some of that wisdom, parse it off for myself, and make an assumption that currently I got Toronto 2.5, and that's not available on the market.
Gotcha. Well, so go back to the sheet for a second, Matt.
Yep.
Because we're still showing it here on the sheet. So I think BetMGM, at least as of when we started the show, BetMGM was still having it at plus 2.5.
They may have bad juice though, so make sure you check that. So
checking
Matt,
it right
I'm
now.
assuming if Matt, you said they never do full lines; they only do half lines.
Yeah, they're
If
1.5.
they leave a 2.5 line up too long, I'm assuming they do is they make it minus 120 or whatever, right?
Yeah, it does show plus 1.5, minus 110. So yeah, but you could bet the alt line at plus 2.5, minus 120. It's just, it's not really
Not as good a bet.
Yeah, it's not
Got
as.
it.
I don't think I would do that, honestly. Like, I
Okay,
think you
if we
lay
could-
off this game, and if +2 comes back later, then go for it. If you don't have
Makes sense.
Toronto yet, and 1.5 is the best you can do, I would say just wait and hope the line goes back up a little.
Okay. All right. So Toronto +2 or better if you see it somewhere in one of the books you have access to. That's a good play.
Yep.
Any other games of value or
Let's talk MVP real quick.
Yeah,
What's that?
Let's talk MVP real quick.
yeah. I think we should
All
pivot
right.
to futures in general because we don't really have. That's it. We
Mike, you
covered
had
all
a
the
hot
value.
take. I want to hear it.
Well, so MVP. All
Let's talk
right.
about
Who do you think should be favored right now? Don't look at the odds. I'm sure Matt, you know them across 17 different books, but who do you think should be favored right now?
I know what the lines are. I really think that Luka and Tatum are basically in a tie now. I think the odds are pretty efficient.
Okay.
So
and-
I'm going to
all
have
right,
a boring response for you because I can't argue back and forth with you too much if my take is it's even.
Okay.
I think Tatum and Luka are 1 and 2, and I think Giannis is poorly priced. But other than that, I don't have a strong take.
Do you
right
think
now.
Giannis is not as close to Tatum and Luka as his odds? Do you think he should be higher or lower?
I think Tatum should be third. I mean, I guess my take is Tatum should be third in odds, or Giannis should be third in odds.
Right.
But,
Okay. Yeah, I agree that Giannis is not as likely as Luka and Tatum right now.
Yeah, no hot takes on that. We're all in agreement that Giannis is number 3. What maybe this was a hotter take a week or so ago, but at least what I had been seeing recently is Luka was the favorite with Tatum kind of closing the gap, but Tatum being seen as a clear number 2. My opinion is Tatum should be the clear number 1 right now. I think the Celtics are going to finish 15 to 20 games better than the Mavs. And if that's the case, I don't care what Luka's numbers look like. They're going to reward best player on the best team when it's that much of a gap. We talked yesterday or the day before about last year with Jokic and Embiid and how, the end gap in wins wasn't that big. So that's where, if there was going to be a hit against Jokic, it kind of went out the window. This year, there's going to be a significant gap. Now, again, this is barring any major trades or changes in lineups and things like that. But with the way Tatum's playing, if they are 15 to 20 games better than the Mavs, I don't care what history Luka's done. I think the voters will, I don't want to say punish the Mavs or punish Luka for this ridiculously high usage, but I think they're just going to go with best player on the best team, and that's clearly Tatum. And this isn't just that he's the best player on the best team; he's having his own kind of historic season.
Right, he's a top
also
5
better-
player
he's
in the
also
league
better
anyway.
Yeah, last point. I know, Mike, you want to get something in, but
Yeah.
last point is Tatum's significantly better on the defensive end than Luka is as well. So when you start looking at that, yeah, Luka's setting some history here, but that's my I guess lukewarm take now is Tatum should be the favorite. What do you get?
My real quick response to that is I think the voters are going to see the Celtics go to the finals somewhat out of nowhere last year. I know obviously it felt like we were on it all season, but to most people that was relatively out of nowhere. And then for them to have if they end up with this like 62 win record and Tatum finishes with, super strong MVP type numbers, I don't see how in that reality he doesn't win the MVP. I agree with you there. But that's assuming a lot of things still, and
Yeah.
obviously like I don't know what odds you guys are seeing. These guys are just getting to the point where there's not a lot of meat on the bone, right? I think the hierarchy is somewhat efficiently priced. And there's really like not a lot of guys I even want to take shots on. Maybe Ja Morant, because we've made the argument Grizzlies might end up with one of the best records in the West.
Yeah.
Same argument, best player on the best team. The Grizzlies made the Final Four in the conference last year. Maybe there's a similar effect there if the Grizzlies.
Yeah, I think you're right. John's an interesting one if the number got big enough, but also
I'm seeing 24-1.
Well, that's kind of big. I guess
Looking at
yeah, I'm not
30,
even
30 to
crazy
1
about
on FanDuel for Morant right now.
Yeah, my thinking there is in the West, just the number of wins. Even though Memphis may have the best record in the West, I don't think they're going to have that many more wins than Dallas will.
Right.
So
He's
I
priced
just-
10x Tatum, and I don't even like it, so I'm agreeing with you.
yeah. I just think the gap of wins that Boston's probably going to end up with is something to keep an eye on. So
Definitely
that was
something
my-
to keep an eye on. To like summarize all of that, if the season ended right now, I agree. Tatum's the MVP. Not even close. He's going to get every vote. It's just we're early in the year. Dallas is a game under 500. Luka can't win MVP if the team has that record. But there's 60 games left, and if Dallas goes 45-37 and Boston goes 57-25 and finishes like 4 games ahead of Milwaukee or something, and Luka's numbers are 20% better than Tatum's, Luka's going to win. So right now it's Tatum, but Luka is the better player. There's a lot of season left. The records are probably going to narrow, but it's certainly going to be worth watching, because if Dallas drops another game to a Detroit-like team, or Boston wins another national TV game like they're playing Miami tonight, Tatum versus Butler, like Butler's back, it should be harder for him. If he scores 49 again, like we're going to see the odds move a lot. So we're at kind of like an inflection point where I think a lot could change. The reason I wouldn't say to just like bet Tatum and Luka, you could just take both, right? Like they're almost 3-1. If one of them wins, you're going to make a lot of money. But Morant at 30-1, even Jokic at 35-1, Durant at 35-1, Curry and Embiid are still kind of hanging around. I don't think Donovan Mitchell has much of a chance, but it's early. We're a quarter of the way through the season. Like a lot could happen. Plus Tatum could get hurt. Like there's just so much. So we're early is the point. And I agree Tatum should be probably a tiny favorite over Luka right now. I know that's not, you're saying it should be more, but I guess what I'm agreeing with is if the season was over, Tatum's the MVP. I agree with that part.
Okay. All right. Yeah. When I checked last night, Luka had better odds. So that was, I thought would be a little bit more of a surprising thing, that it seemed like there was more folks saying this is Luka's award to lose. I think it's Tatum's award to lose.
Tatum was the favorite on DraftKings even prior to last night's loss for Dallas. So it's kind of there. Like we're kind of there in terms of the odds.
Got it. All right. So reminder for everybody, keep an eye on Preaching Sense Twitter account. We'll have a recap of what we're saying is bettable now and things to keep an eye on. If possible, we'll update you as the changes come in. Also, keep an eye out. We'll let you know we are iffy on whether we'll be doing a show tomorrow. We think most likely on. If so, 10 a.m. For the worldwide audience, you can watch us on one screen and see the U.S. soccer team on the other screen, since I'm sure everybody's watching in real time. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Mike and Matt, talk to you.